Creating is hard as hell, but community can make all the difference. Join We Create Daily, our community of storytellers of all kinds who, like you, are looking to advance their craft, careers, and creativity. Join our membership community today at thecreatedaily.com. That's thecreatedaily.com. And make your creative journey a little easier alongside like-minded storytellers just like you. When I talk to OGs in the business, they often talk about how Hollywood is cyclical, right? They also have said that they've never seen Hollywood in the position that Hollywood is in right now, that it definitely feels different to them. But one thing that I have done that I would recommend if you're just starting out with is make sure you have your why, that North Star that keeps you focused and grounded and going, and that is bigger than Hollywood. And that you don't fear the unknown, but you prepare for it. We did it.
Woo, woo.
We are here with a whole podcast. A whole podcast. Not half a podcast. A whole podcast.
That's right. 100.
Welcome to the Creative Cut Up Podcast, a lively and honest space for storytellers that sits at the intersection of craft, business, and independence. I'm Felicia Pride, a writer, director, producer, head honey and honey child, and head storyteller of the Create Daily, a platform I founded in 2012 to help storytellers, especially those of us who are historically excluded, thrive creatively and professionally. And I'm here with my co-host because we got some cutting up to do.
We sure do. I'm Dria Rowland, the creative executive at Honey Child and a writer and producer.
Yes, she is.
And I'm Georgette Pierre, a voice actor and producer. You can hear it, right?
Oh, we hear that voice,
right.
honey.
Oh,
we
yeah.
hear the voice.
Oh, yeah.
So join us weekly where we talk shop and smack and share the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Listen.
And from 3 different perspectives, which I love, providing tangible tips to support your creative practice, your career, and your artist self. Because we all know that being an artist is hard as hell.
Oof.
Say that.
But the Creative Cut Up is here to help. Shall we begin, ladies?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Hey, and welcome to another installment of the Creative Cut Up Podcast.
We are here.
And how are you, Georgette?
I'm doing my best. I'm doing well. Planning for my 40th this year. Going to be an official honey.
Yes, honey. We are excited to welcome you. It's good over here. Okay. It is good over here. Let me tell you.
I know it. I can't wait. I'm excited. But it's been moving through some personal things and career things. But I'm happy. I'm grateful.
I feel like that's such a great segue into what we're talking about today, which is, what would you have done differently, essentially entering this business, right? If you were entering this business now, which, it's the wild, wild west, but if you were entering Hollywood now, what would you do differently, especially as we're reflecting on age and getting older? Yeah. So I think it's such a great segue into today's conversation. I finished the WGA showrunner training program, which was an amazing program. There were just a number of fantastic writers, all with a shared dream, just kind of had me reflecting on my journey, because 10 years ago, if you were to ask me where I was going to be in 10 years, it would not have been here. I would have never imagined that I'd be finishing a WGA showrunner training program, and doing the things that I'm doing. So I just never imagined that for myself. I would say parts of it was very painful over these 10 years, learned a lot of lessons, grew a lot. So I feel like there are things that I wish I would have known a little bit more of before getting into the business. So to start, I think one of the things I would have wanted to know, or I wouldn't say done differently, because I think you do things in order to learn. But if I were starting now, I would say, one, really making sure that you have a strong sense of self, right? I see a lot of folks coming into the business really unsure of who they are, really lacking confidence, all the things that I had for sure. But you realize how other people kind of prey on that in the business. And then you realize how you make decisions based on lack of confidence or low self-worth. And those decisions end up being harmful to you or painful to you or whatever the case is. So I would say for those who are coming into business now, really work on that sense of self, really work on that confidence, really work on that self-worth, whether that's through therapy, which we have a whole episode about therapy and being an artist.
Episode 10.
Whether episode 10, whether that is getting in community with folks, whether that is making sure that you have balanced or grounded, whatever that looks like for you. That's a huge, huge thing about this business, because I did not realize how emotionally jarring and painful the business is. I wish somebody would have told me, because I was not ready. I was not prepared. I always say I've never seen anything like the way that Hollywood operates in my life. And I've worked many jobs, many careers. So that's one big thing that I would say. What about yourself? What's one thing you would say?
So I was in grad school at Emerson College, and at the time...
Shout out to Emerson. Both of us went to grad school at Emerson.
Their LA campus was non-existent. It was an apartment neighborhood in Burbank next to the Warner Brothers Studios. I forgot what it was called.
I forgot the name of it. Yeah.
We're doing classes there.
Notorious, infamous, but I can't remember the name.
People would stay there and they would teach classes in this complex. And so I remember in grad school, I was like, man, I want to go to LA. I want to try LA. And this was like 2009, but I was so scared to. And being in New York, and then now thinking about the pivot to LA, like 15 years later, I'm like, I wish I didn't talk myself out of doing the LA internship through Emerson College. I think that was huge for me, because your trajectory is what your trajectory is. I think things would have looked different had I started in LA right after grad school versus starting in New York. But it happened the way it was supposed to. But that's one thing that stands out to me that I would have done differently.
And I think like what's so interesting about that is really what it is not talking yourself out of things. Right. Like if there's one thing, for those who are entering the business now or pivoting or whatever the case is, like, and even now I'm really making sure that I'm working towards not talking myself out of things. The sooner you can do that, the better off you will be, because the world will absolutely tell you no. Mm-hmm. Right. But if we are making sure that we're not telling ourselves no first, that's huge. Mm-hmm. I think another thing for me that I would have done is, or if I was starting out now, definitely building your network is huge and really, really important, and building it very widely. I will say that I think I did a pretty good job of meeting a lot of writers and getting into spaces. So I would meet them through classes. I would volunteer. I would go to everything. I would go to every event I saw. But I do think that I probably could have done more with the networking, because even in the showrunner training program, I was like, wow, I don't know a lot of these people. And I thought I had a good grasp on knowing a number of writers. Mm-hmm. So the more writers you can know, the more writers that you can be in community with, the more writers that you can, be of service to, support, exchange information, the more executives that you can know, that you can exchange information with. And then outside of Hollywood, I think now what I'm finding is that I'm trying to build my network outside of that. So I would have simultaneously built my network outside of Hollywood. Now, I came into Hollywood with a network outside of that, but I would have continued that work. I think I got laser focused, which I may have needed to do, but I probably would have wanted to simultaneously build my network in tech, in brands, in, executives in corporate America, like just expanding outside of Hollywood, which is something that I'm doing now. I wish I would have done more of, for sure. Because again, as we talked about in the multiple streams of income and entrepreneurship episode, the way that the business is going, you want to be able to have connections across the board for opportunities that may not just be Hollywood opportunities, but are still, within your lane of storytelling. But yeah, I would have definitely been expanding my network even more.
That's a really good one as far as expanding the network. I think the thing for coming into it now, and even like a mix of what I thought about and may have diminished then, was one, do not discredit the things that you are creating on your own because it's not attached to a company, right? Like the big thing was, this company didn't help me do this. I created this on my own. It's not official experience. And it's like, no, 10 years ago, people didn't think about it that way. But if anything, they're looking for your own self-initiative, right? Like they're like, well, did you pick up a camera? Did you create this project? Did you produce this project? Did you direct this project? Did you write this project?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't tooted back then, but it's loud now, wrapped up in that. And then finding ways to be in service to people. When you were talking about your network, I was thinking like these two go hand in hand, because I always was looking for the next job, wanting the recruiter to, get in their faces versus, Georgette, how can you be in service to what they need, right? You're asking for something from people you don't know, but what are you offering to these people that could potentially do something for you? So that was huge for me, and something that I tell people now when I talk to them in informationals. I was like, be in service to them. Find out how you can help them. Stop asking for something, right? You will get your feelings hurt real quick.
Child, the way sometimes my inbox be like, can you read this? I don't know who you are. I don't know where you come from. Can I read what? But I would say something interesting about that. The audacity of it. I can't believe it. But I will say something about finding a balance between that audaciousness and speaking up more, or I wouldn't say speaking up more necessarily. I would say making the ask. I think I would have what I'm doing now, but I would have done a lot more of making the ask. So if that is, after a showrunner meeting, how can I get this job? Or, you're looking for jobs, you're trying to staff, emailing everybody, hey, y'all, I'm looking for a job. Like, speaking up for what you need, doing more of that. I would do some of that, but I would wait until the very last straw, you know what I mean? The last leg. But I'm like, no, more proactive, making the ask, because you've already been in service, right? People have seen how you've been reciprocal in your relationship building, but speaking up and making the ask, like, I need this, I'm looking for this, I think is really important. And then along those lines too, when you said not discrediting things that you make, I wish I would have started making more early on. I wish I was like making web series. I wish I've already directed a feature. That is something that for writers now, I really recommend making stuff if you can. And that doesn't have to be long form things. That could be, content for Instagram. That could be content for YouTube. But I think the making is important on a levels. 1, just keep yourself sharp. 2, building audience. 3, the fortification that happens when you're making, because this business is so much, as we talked about in our last episode, the business doesn't really make that much stuff. You making stuff and kind of reminding you why you do what you do and being in direct connection with your audience because you're making things. I really wish I was making much more stuff. So one of the things that I'm doing moving forward, even now, is like, yes, I, continue to go down the traditional Hollywood trajectory, but also let's make. Like, let's do across the gamut, audio. Let's make short form video. Let's see if we can get this first feature off the ground, but let's make. Yeah, for sure. Acting on your ideas is a form of self-love. And when I decided to write the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal, it was with you in mind. Storytellers with stories inside of you that you need to get out into the world. But life, fear, uncertainty has a way of leaving us stuck. But no more. It's time to reclaim our creative practice and get unstuck. The Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal can help you get back on creative track. 30 days of dynamic prompts, exercises to stimulate creativity, alongside motivational quotes, journal pages, and more. If you're ready to create again, get your copy of the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal today at creativecomeback.com. That's creativecomeback.com. Because it's never too late to become the artist you always wanted to be.
Absolutely. One that comes to mind in regards to that is, they tell you pick one thing and do that. And so I think there's a balance that you can find with that. But I will say everyone that's stuck with the one thing that they wanted to do, like my friend that wanted to be a director, whether he would have had to sleep in his car in LA, he eventually became a director. And hearing you talk about writing, I wish that I literally stuck it out with wanting to do on-air hosting or just talent related things. I kept bouncing. I bounced around to find my footing, but I only got a little bit of all these things because I wasn't focused on the one main thing and then having the through line of different things. And so if anyone was entering the business now, I would say figure out a way to create the path that you want while also trying to find ways to complement the path through other avenues, whether it was a corporation or whether it was a brand or whether it was something else. Because when I look at the people that are on air hosts or they're doing this and they get all these talent or podcast opportunities, I was like, I was doing that years prior to XYZ. And then I didn't write it out.
That is a huge one. And I have to shout out Lisa Cortez, fantastic documentary director, amazing producer. When I first moved to LA, I had a call with her and I was basically trying to decide if I wanted to become a creative producer or if I wanted to be a writer, which is, now that I think about it, is absolutely ridiculous because I was a writer already. Mind you, it was like, okay, yes, I was going into a different space in terms of going from books and journalism to TV and film, but I was still a writer. But she was like, pick one. She's like, because there are different trajectories. And, at first I was like, wow, I don't really want to have to pick one, but I'm so grateful for that advice because once I picked writing and went down that path, then I was able to add directing. And she's done something similar where she chose producing and now she added directing and has done some amazing, amazing documentaries. So I highly recommend that advice of if you are a Jill of all trades like I was, and it sounds like you were too, Georgette, it can be hard, but pick that one thing. Get that one thing down, solidify yourself with that one thing, and then you can add on directing, then you can add on producing, then you can add on whatever you want to add on.
There was a development executive that I had interviewed for Emerson's podcast. She's also an Emerson alum. And when I was telling her about the writing classes I was taking and then talking about producing path, it was similar to when you and I had a conversation. You were like, Georgette, you light up when you talk about producing. And I figured, I was like, maybe I could teeter the lines. She said the same thing. She said, they are two different trajectories. Like, which one would you want to do? Which one? And I was like, to be honest, producing is just what I fall into easily. And I was like, writing is cool. I like the fact of taking writing classes to help inform, me to be a better producer and learn more things. I said, but I would start with the producing track. And it just kind of felt a lot lighter to release having to do all these things. But again, if someone had told me that sooner, right? When I started to work at a network and start to go down the path of certain things, speaking of, another thing that comes to mind is like I started in production management. I'm still in production management, but production management is very, very clear, right? Like you are going the line producer route. You are, you're
not doing creative.
You are not doing creative producing work, and they tell you it's really hard to cross over. And I didn't really get out of production management soon enough, and I'm now on that path of jumping over to the creative side. And so I've been grateful that I've been able to have some transferable skill sets, but that is very loud for me too. And so if your path that you're on is going to be different than the path that you want to jump to, see if you can jump sooner than later,
Well, I think what a lot of that is too is not letting fear lead, because I think a lot of times we are in a certain path because we're scared to do the path we really want to do. So one thing I would say is like, if you can start out with having a healthy relationship with your fear, because your fear is there to protect you. So we don't want it to completely go away. But if you can really establish a healthy relationship with your fear so that you're not letting fear lead, y'all might be walking hand in hand, but you are the boss. And so that you're not making decisions that are going to derail you, slow you down, hold you back, all of those things. So I definitely feel that.
Absolutely.
One thing I also would do differently is, I wouldn't say I would do differently because, I took on a number of OWAs, which we talked about in last episode 12. Episode 12 about how to get a television show on air. OWAs are open writing assignments. And I've taken them on in the TV space and in the film space, and they've worked out in terms of selling stuff and getting checks from those things. Okay. But one thing I wish I would have understood and done earlier is finding my own opportunities and really pushing those opportunities. So that's something that I'm doing now. So for instance, if there's a book that I like, going after it or working with my reps to go after it and positioning myself in that way, or writing more, taking out more original pitches that I have, originated versus doing so many OWAs, because I think there's just an interesting power shift. And I'm using the word interesting nicely.
Right.
An interesting power dynamic when it's an OWA versus when this is a project that you've originated, that you're taking out, that you're looking for partners to bring on board. The OWAs were helpful to me, but it can be hard to like make that pivot if you haven't really been thinking about original ideas and original projects and all that. And then you find yourself, yes, you're the writer and yes, you may be the creator, but it's still all kind of someone else's vision, someone else's idea. So to be able to originate material and bring that out more to the marketplace is definitely something I would have wished I thought about more. Or if I was starting out now, I would absolutely be doing. And again, it could still be based on IP, but it's you initiating.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important. I think to even like bow it up for me with what you said earlier and just piecing it together, at least for my career trajectory, having a healthy confidence in what I know, a healthy confidence in the things that I know how to do, and then also speaking towards that to that confidence and asking for what I want. And so, for example, there was a point where I was starting to feel like I'm applying to all these jobs for producer positions. I feel like I haven't had the title on my resume, and sometimes I'm feeling like enough. And I'm like, well, Georgette, you've been doing this for a while. You have an understanding or a scope. Like, you have to believe in yourself a lot more than these companies are not going to fill you up. Okay. Like, they're not going to fill you up with these things that you're looking for. And so really having a healthy confidence in believing the work that I know how to do because I've been doing it in various aspects, but also, not being afraid to ask questions, to speak on what I don't know. A lot of times when we're in these positions and when we're starting out, you don't want to really reveal that you don't know the things that they think that you should know. But the reality is, like, they also don't know all the things that they should know, and they're still in the positions that they're in. And so just really just being honest with where I am, but just really working on having a healthy confidence to be more assertive, to believe in my ability to do the things that I'm going after as well.
That's huge. The confidence piece is huge. I think also because this Hollywood in particular is a business based on performance. And I mean performance as in like acting performances. So the way that we show up into rooms and the way that we carry ourselves and sort of the inherent power that we are giving off, people are attracted to that. So I think the confidence piece is definitely huge. Here's what I will say is that when I talk to OGs in the business, they often talk about how Hollywood is cyclical, right? They also have said that they've never seen Hollywood in the position that Hollywood is in right now, that it definitely feels different to them. But one thing that I have done that I would recommend if you're just starting out with is make sure you have your why, that North Star that keeps you focused and grounded and going. And that is bigger than Hollywood. And that you don't fear the unknown, but you prepare for it, right? So, there's a lot of fear mongering going on, which may be valid. Writers are struggling and a lot of writers are struggling. This is very, very true. But for me, I'm kind of like, I can't get bogged down by what's going to happen with this industry. Because one, I don't know what's going to happen. What I can do is focus on making sure that I can eat. So if that means I got to get a job outside this industry, whatever I have to do. But I also can focus on my why. What is my why? And my why, as I've said before, is that I tell stories that feature Black people, especially Black women, and get those stories to the people. So if that's my why, that does not have to be done in Hollywood. And I can seek opportunities that are, pointing towards the future, right? That's why we're into audio. That's why we're looking at books again. Yeah. That's why we're looking at, trying to do some indie television, the opportunities that are pointing towards the future and focusing on those versus getting bogged down in an industry that may need to change drastically. It may need to have a rebirth, right? But that doesn't mean that that's going to stop my purpose or my why. I'm just going to pivot in terms of the platform or the way or the approach towards my why.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I would end it with, at least on this front, just believe in whatever you want to do and then trust that it's going to happen despite what it may look like, to your point, right? Because it's easy to be like, oh, Hollywood looks like this. I don't know if I should do this. It's like, well, if this is what you are meant to do and want to do, a way will be created for you to do said thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think that takes us to our segment called How We Create, where we share all forms of inspiration that may have stopped us in our tracks, made us laugh, had us shouting, or even reminded us to rest.
Yeah.
What is your inspiration for the week?
Yeah, I'm going to lean into, as we're talking about things we would have done differently, or not being led by fear. I am fucking with the Gerard Carmichael reality show. I like him as a comedian. I've always followed him, his sitcom that used to be on NBC years ago, The Carmichael Show.
Which was great.
It was really good. And so Nathaniel, where he came out. But this reality show, it is eye-opening, and he is really sitting in a vulnerable place, navigating his queerness as a Black male, right? That just lived behind these shadows for so long, and his parents accepting him, or trying to get his parents, not trying, but navigating his parents not being able to see past his sexuality. And it's been really, really refreshing to see. And I was like, I would not be surprised if you won an Emmy for this. That's my shit. The Gerard Carmichael reality show on HBO.
Okay. I've been hearing so many things about it.
Yeah.
But reality is hard for me because it makes me so uncomfortable. Like, I mean, all reality television except So You Think You Can Dance. Yeah. But like everything else, I feel so much anxiety for these folks. You know what I mean?
Because he's it's not like the fake, all these other reality shows.
And that's even more anxiety inducing.
He's sitting in his New York apartment. It's some real uncomfy conversations happening on camera. But it's good. I hope he gets another season. But it was really good. Really good.
Fantastic. Well, I have been listening to the audiobook of 10 times is better than 2 times. I think that's the title. But a bunch of business folks, because, I listen to a bunch of business podcasts, and have recommended this book. Finally got it, and it is reading me. Basically, the premise of the book is, setting 2 times goals, basically small goals, is harder than setting 10 times goals, big, audacious goals. An example is setting a goal to make $100,000 this year versus setting a goal to make $1 million this year, right? Often when we set 2 times goals, we are only doing a little bit more, a little bit different than we're doing now. It's not transformative. But when we set 10 times goals, we are forced to think bigger, think more strategically, and the things that aren't really adding up to that 10 times goal need to go away. And it forces us to transform. And it's like, it intuitively, but it's been eye-opening to hear it in this way. And for me to think about what a 10 times goal would be for me. And when I did, I was like, oh, I have to move way differently than I'm doing right now if I were to hit this goal. So it's been a fantastic book.
I got to look into that. That sounds really good. Yes. Okay.
Well, thank y'all so much for listening to another edition of the Creative Cut Up podcast. It has been so gratifying to be showing up every week to talk and cut up about the business, about art, about craft, and about keeping going. So you all keep us going. So thank y'all. Keep the reviews coming. Keep the DMs coming.
Please.
Keep sharing, and we'll keep showing up.
Yes. Tell your mama and them. Okay.
Yes. Tell them all. Tell your aunties.
Okay. All right.
Tell them.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Cut Up podcast, a lively and honest space for storytellers that sits at the intersection of craft, business, and independence. Listen to us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you dig it, subscribe, rate, review, and please tell a friend. If you need help getting back into your creative practice, check out the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal. You can also join our newsletter and our We Create Daily community, both of which provide even more resources and opportunities to thrive creatively at thecreatedaily.com. And lastly, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at The Create Daily. Ever wonder how a novel went from the page to the screen? How an entire film derived from a great magazine article? Or how you get the life rights to tell the story of that fascinating person you met or historical figure you're obsessed with? Learn the process in our new on-demand course called Based On: How to Adapt Books, Articles, and Real-Life Stories for Film and TV. Led by myself, Felicia Pride, and Dria Rowland, Honeychild's creative executive and co-host of the Creative Cut Up podcast, you'll learn the process of optioning and developing IP for adaptation, the nuances of 3 different types of adaptations: books, articles, life rights, all the development jargon, what Honeychild looks for and how we source, search, and track IP, plus the answers to all of your burning questions. We'll break down the ins and outs of adapting IP and more. You'll get immediate access to our on-demand course for 6 months upon registration. So sign up today at thecreatedaily.com.